Just how bad is the world's herbicide-resistant weeds problem? What countries have it? In what weed species? To what herbicides are they resistant? And perhaps most importantly, where can we expect it to develop next? One guy who's in a unique position to answer that question is Ian Heap, an Aussie based in the US.
Getting back to 1944 in Wayne County, Nebraska, and this was controlling field bindweed on the roadside with 22 tonnes per acre of salt. Shortly after that, though, we saw the introduction of modern herbicides, the synthetic auxins, 2,4-D, MCPA, and that really revolutionized weed control. And it took until about 1970 before we saw the first well-documented case of herbicide resistance, and that was common groundsel, Senecio vulgaris.
Ian runs the International Survey of Herbicide-Resistant Weeds. Whenever there's a new case of resistance anywhere in the world, this is where it's recorded.
Scientists have really adopted it in a big way. They are using it to communicate with each other, to post new cases as they come out, even before they get to publish them in scientific journals. Unfortunately, we continue at a relatively consistent rate to see more species become resistant. Right now we have 217 different species of weeds with resistance and about 397, I think it was at last count, of unique types of resistance. So these are species with unique herbicide modes of action resistances. And that increases at a very consistent rate of about 11 new types per year. And it's been doing that since 1972. In many cases, we have the same weed species evolving resistance to the same herbicides in the same crops, but in different countries. So if it happens in one country, it's a warning to another country, hey, watch out, you need to manage and try and avoid resistance in that species to those herbicides.
The clues are there about what species are likely to be next.
In 1996, we actually used the database to try to predict which weeds might become resistant to glyphosate. But out of those top 10, 6 of them have already become resistant to glyphosate. Chenopodium album in the United States, we call that lamb's quarters. I think you call it fat hen here, do you? Yes, yeah, fat hen. So that one I had predicted would become resistant, and I'm surprised it hasn't yet. Wild oat actually was one that is not glyphosate resistant, but I predict it has the potential for it, so that's another one.
For Australian farmers, the US experience with glyphosate-resistant Palmer amaranth, probably America's #1 weed, is worth considering.
Palmer amaranth, I call it the ideal weed. And why is it the ideal weed? It's a weed it's very accustomed to growing in very arid climates. I would consider that it would probably grow quite well here if given the opportunity. It's a weed that's going to produce close to 1 million seed per plant. It has a very, very rapid growth rate. We'll experience anywhere from 6 to 7 centimeters of growth per day. And as a result of that, it's very challenging to time post-emergence herbicides because most weed control applications need to be extremely early.
In the league table of countries with herbicide resistance, Australia runs second. Weed surveys and resistance testing are an ongoing part of GRDC's research investment.
We have recently identified the first case of Group M or glyphosate-resistant brome. It was in Bromus diandrus. This population was from the Yorke Peninsula in South Australia, and recently we also identified a second population from Victoria.
Over the last few years, in most parts of Australia, there has been a lot of effort, a lot of time and money spent to really find out what resistance we've got out there, and we've got that data in Australia. We know how much resistance there is and where it is to what, and that's been a great degree of work to get that, but a lot of strategic good decision making can occur when you have that data.